Hey guys, it's me Ximarru or Jimena. Since my OCs have basically taken over my life, I decided to show you guys how I changed them into what you see before you. In this video, I won't be explaining too much of their lore just because I do want to make a separate video for that. And I'm still changing a few things here and there, so please bear with me. Instead, you'll be seeing how and why I decided to change some of their designs, their personalities, and some fun facts about them. Now, before we actually get started, I do want to say that not all of my OCs were changed, and if they were only changed just a bit. Of course, I do have some OCs that have gone through some pretty major changes. If not, I wouldn't be doing this video. But enough of that, let's get started. First up, we have Danny and Sebastian. Sebastian is our protagonist, and Danny is the first OC I created for this story. Like I said, Sebastian is the protag, so I'll start with him first. I don't have many drawings of his whole design, but I do have this small doodle I did of him a while back. I've always wanted an OC with some kind of fire ability and to be able to have them show it with their hair. So that's exactly what Sebastian's first design was. In his original design, he was more of a grumpy and moody guy who could care less about anything. He was definitely meant to look like a bad boy and someone who didn't follow the rules. I'm not saying his old design was bad, I actually do still like it a lot, but I wasn't satisfied with it. It wasn't until I was actually trying to think of their lore that it finally clicked. I think when most people think of pyro characters, they think of someone strong, cold, or bad-tempered. So I decided to switch it up completely and make him a kind, emotional, caring guy who has a hard time using his ability. How creative, I know. I think this change makes him more interesting and adds more depth to his character, which is exactly what was missing with his first design. Now, although his personality changed drastically, his appearance still gives him somewhat of a tough guy look. He wears a leather jacket, his hair is slicked back, and he has a lot of piercings. And there actually is a reason for him trying to keep a tough guy image, and that's because as a kid, he actually got picked on for not being able to use and control his ability. So when he moves schools, he decides he wants to look like someone you wouldn't want to mess with. Therefore, he tries to look as intimidating as possible, even though he's just a silly guy on the inside. Also, fun fact, but his piercings are actually clip-on since he's too afraid to commit to the real thing. And now we have Danny. Like I mentioned, Danny was the first OC I created for this story. She wasn't meant to have a story though, she was just an OC I had created for fun. If I'm being honest, I think I cooked with her design because it's been a good 3 years or so and I haven't changed her design much. I think the only visible changes would be her eye color, which is now more of a red color, and her outfit. But other than that, there's no big changes in her appearance. Personality-wise though, there are a couple of changes. When I first made Danny, she was meant to be cold and aloof. But that didn't last too long since I ended up creating another character who I thought fit more of those traits, which you'll see later on. Now Danny's more girly, caring, confident, and for the most part a rule follower. She's into fashion and could be described as a loser trapped inside a hot body. A couple of things that also changed was the fact that Danny was also supposed to have an ability. At first, she had the ability to turn her body parts into those of a cat, but I ended up changing it since it didn't really fit into her character or the story. I ended up giving her a plant-based ability instead since I thought it would be cute to pair her up with Sebastian. You know, like a fire and plants dynamic. I thought that would be very cute. I am still deciding whether to keep that though, since other than cute and funny moments with Sebastian, her plant-like ability wouldn't really affect her character either. I don't know, I still have to think about it. It's either that or no ability at all, which is what I've been leaning towards more recently. Next up is Haime and Day. Fun fact, Haime was actually meant to be the main character, and he was for the longest time. But that was before I made Sebastian and started connecting the dots with their lore. He's still an important character, of course, just not the main character. Now, the biggest difference between his old and new design was his hair. I wanted him to have white hair for the longest time, but every time I would draw him, it never felt right. But then again, it could also be because I kept changing his hairstyle quite often. Haime was always a character I had in my head, but when it came to actually designing him, I had a very hard time. I changed his look very often because I was never satisfied with his design. Even now, I still make a few minor changes every now and then, but for the most part, he stays the same. I ended up giving up on the white hair and instead settling with brown hair. I'm not mad about it though, Haime is definitely my most average looking OC, but I think it's part of his charm. And just like Danny, his eye color is also a reddish color, and that's because they are actually siblings. Haime is a year younger than Danny and they are complete opposites. While Danny tries her best to follow the rules, Haime is there to break them. He doesn't do too well in school because of that. He likes to have fun, he's carefree, and doesn't pay too much attention to his classes. If something bothers him, he'll let it be known, and he always stands up for those who can't defend themselves, which doesn't always sit well with some of his classmates. This is why he gets into a lot of fights. I would like to think that when they were kids, Danny would get picked on, so Haime would always pick fights with her bullies in order to protect her. Therefore, even as they got older, he'd always stand up to those who are mean to others. That part of him always stayed the same with his old and new design. Also, I would like to add the fact that Haime doesn't actually have an ability, yet he still tries his best to stand up for others, even if he knows the other person is stronger than him. And next to Haime, we have his boyfriend, Day. I'm just kidding, guys, they're not dating. It's complicated. Day is the character who I would say has changed the least, if anything at all, compared to the rest of my OCs. Day is Aki's younger brother. They are actually half-siblings, they share the same dad but have different moms. I think Day's biggest change is just how dull my colors are now compared to when I first made him, and my art style changed, but other than that, there's not many notable changes. He's always been a cold guy who keeps to himself, but in his first design he was definitely meant to be a lot meaner. Like seriously, he did not like anybody. That has changed, of course. He is still cold towards people who annoy him, but it's not as bad as before. Day is also quite popular around students who have abilities since he has an ability that is well known to be very powerful, which is telekinesis. And he has pretty good control of it too, therefore many students try to befriend him in order to get on his good side. There isn't really much to say about him since he's barely changed at all, so instead I'll just give a small bit of lore of what I had planned for him originally when Haime was still meant to be the main character. So before I came up with this story, Haime and Day were supposed to be the main focus of the story. It was still in a college setting and was meant to be more of a slice of life comic. This story would be focusing on the fun and silly moments between Haime and Day as they have to handle their school life and life as roommates. I won't lie, it was a cute idea, but other than their silly moments, I just couldn't get excited when thinking of their story. And last but not least, we have Lynn and Aki. Lynn, character-wise, has stayed pretty much the same. He's always been a silly, chill, carefree character, kinda like Beast Boy from Teen Titans. He definitely gives loser energy and someone who wouldn't really try in school, but surprisingly is the smartest out of the group. In his old design, he actually had short hair. Even now when I look back at it, I still kinda think if I should have kept it short, but I think long hair suits him better. And besides, I don't have any male characters with long hair, so he's unique in that sense. In his old design, he was definitely still meant to be a silly guy, but he was also supposed to be popular among his peers just like Day. But not because of an ability, but more so just his personality. Later on, I did give him long hair, but instead of it being a low ponytail, which he has now, it was a high ponytail with long strands of hair around his face. I liked this hairstyle a lot when I first drew it, but after some time, every time I tried to draw Lynn, I just couldn't, and it was because of his hairstyle. I had the hardest time drawing a high ponytail for some reason, and no matter how hard I tried, it just never felt right. But I was determined to at least keep a ponytail, so now it's a lot lower and easier for me to draw. I also got rid of the hair on the side of his face and instead replaced it with small strands of hair. Aside from his hair, some small additions I added were freckles and braces. Nothing big, just small additions I thought fit him well. Now for a fun fact, Lynn has had the biggest crush on Aki for the longest time, but for some reason Aki keeps rejecting him. I wonder why. And now finally we're on to our last character, Aki. I think Aki has had some of the most changes along with Haime. In her original design, she had short black hair and she had a muscular physique. And just like the other designs I talked about, I liked her original design a lot, but I felt something was missing. Over time, I started not liking her hair, so I changed it just a bit. It was still short, but the ends were more spiky. I kept this hairstyle for a pretty long time despite me not really liking it, but the only reason I had kept it was because I was scared to change her look. I felt if I changed it a lot, she wouldn't be the same anymore, if that makes sense. But continuing with her design, after I decided to change her hair, I instead gave her long purple hair. And let me tell you, when I gave her this new hairstyle, I loved it. She's so much more fun to draw now, and I like the fact that her hair is purple now, since Sebastian has black hair already. But I do miss her short hair sometimes, and recently I was thinking of bringing it back, especially since Danny already has long hair. But I love her hair too much to change it. Like I mentioned, in her original design, she definitely looked a lot more muscular than she does now. And it's not because I don't want her to be strong anymore, I still do, I just don't want her to look like she's flexing all the time. When I look back at my old drawings of her, I can't help but cringe. I hate the way I drew her body. It just doesn't look right to me. I do think it had a lot to do with the fact that I had never drawn muscles on anyone, let alone a girl. So I was just kind of winging it. So yes, she does still have muscles, just not as defined as before. Alright, now our last fun fact. Aki does have an ability, which is flight, and number 2, no matter what she wears, she has to have some purple on her. Alright, that's all I have for now. Wow, I feel like I yapped for so long. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully you learned a few things about my OCs, and hopefully this video wasn't too confusing. And like I said earlier, I will make an explaining OC lore video. I just have a couple of plot holes to fix. But other than that, until next time.